This is my man. He's my best man. Hi Felicia, Retail Therapy is in session. Thank you for stumbling across Retail Therapy Live. This is not retail therapy in the traditional sense. No, we're not going shopping. Still don't know you like that. Unless you're Jordan, then yes, please come visit me and let's go shopping. But what we are doing today is chatting about the ins and outs and ups and downs of working in retail. Just a little disclaimer, the information that I discuss in this video is solely based on my personal perspective, my opinions, and my experience, and in no way officially represents any of the companies that may be discussed going forward. My only intention is to share my story, but never to misrepresent any company or any person. Please do not mind my ever-changing hair today. It is hella rainy and it's just living its best life, so yeah. So for today's session, to put things simply, I want to talk about what things to consider, what questions to ask, and what to look out for when you're thinking about joining a new company. Of course, not everybody is going to be at liberty to be quite this picky, and there's nothing wrong with that. My suggestions and opinions are ideal for those of you who have that freedom to pick and choose your next move in hopes of landing the perfect position. I got spicy lip gloss in my throat. Lucky me. So let's dive into some questions you can ask yourself and your potential employer while looking into your next endeavor. Question number 1. Is this company a pyramid scheme? If you answered yes, bestie, run. If you answered no, continue. Number 2 is values. If you're someone who has worked with literally any company, I'd be willing to bet that you have sat down on your first day, went through the dress code, the policies, the procedures, and of course the company values. I'd also be willing to bet that the company wanted you to be able to recite these values off the top of your head at any given moment. Professional values are definitely important, but have you ever considered your values and will that prospective company align with them? In my opinion, this is just as, if not more important. Some examples of my values are my personal time. For example, is my time going to be respected by this employer? Or am I going to be harassed on my days off? Financial security. Will I have a reliable source of income, or does this company work only off of commissions? And lastly, authenticity. Does the company have a reputation for being authentic and honest, or are they known for being more shady and dishonest? My favorite website to use for a deep dive on a company's reputation and values is Glassdoor, whom I have no affiliation with. I just enjoy using it for my own personal use. Whatever. Take those reviews on Glassdoor with a grain of salt, because oftentimes angry people are the ones who are going to be speaking out. Number 3, objectives. Company objectives are essentially goals and aspirations, usually something like sales, profit, and customer satisfaction, etc. For example, occasionally companies will have customer retention for one of their objectives. So that can mean you as an employee will be required to sign people up for loyalty programs, ask customers to fill out surveys, and even cold call old clientele. And this can result in a lot of rejection, sometimes not so friendly. So consider if you're comfortable being required to perform these daily tasks. Number 4 is growth. If retail is something that you're good at and you enjoy, then you're definitely going to be interested in opportunities within the company for growth. I definitely suggest doing your homework to determine if the company that you're exploring has a good track record of stability and opportunity. Some useful tactics I use to gain insight on a company are done within the interview process. You know that point of the interview where you get to the very end and the recruiter is asking you, "Do you have any questions for us?" Yes, you do. Question number 1. On a store level, can you please tell me about the turnover rate of your employees? Question number 2. To follow my previous question, is the store turnover due to people taking external opportunities, or is it because people are getting promoted from within? Question number 3. Can you give me a specific example of where a team member grew significantly within your business? Question number 4. What programs do you guys have in place for employees to take advantage of in order to learn and grow within the company? Number 5, location. Location can make an immense impact on how you feel physically and mentally at a job. Because I could go off in about a million different avenues in reference to the importance of location, I'll just narrow it down to a few points based around my own personal experiences. Example number 1, demographic. The demographic of an area can give you an idea beforehand what the energy is going to be like in your mall or storefront. If you're looking at a job in an area with a lot of seniors or a lot lower population, you can expect low energy, more meaningful connections, but this can also come with its own challenges, such as very long and boring days, difficulty making sales, and in extreme cases, the potential of being shut down if you can't compete with the higher volume stores. That is definitely an extreme scenario, but honestly, very recently, I've seen this happen with multiple different companies within my actual mall that I work in right now. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're considering a position in an area with high population, especially with young families, then you can likely expect it's going to be a lot noisier, a lot messier, and you definitely won't be bored. And bonus sales will come a lot easier as well. Example number 2 is distance. Maybe this is a no-brainer, but don't neglect to contemplate travel time versus shift length to see if it's even going to be worth it to take this position for the amount of time that you'll be in transit. This mostly pertains to people who are taking public transit, because naturally it always takes a lot longer to get to where you're going, especially if you have to be train hopping, and that alone is extremely exhausting. I recall not that long ago transiting everywhere because I was too scared to get my driver's license until I was like 25. Story. And there was a time that I worked on the outskirts of Calgary. Because it was outside of the city limits, I had to get a city bus and a mall shuttle. That shuttle was very, very infrequent, so most days I would find myself an hour early to work and staying an hour later after work, not to mention the actual travel time, which sucked because it's transit. So by the time I would actually get to work, I was exhausted and miserable. And this particular mall is absolutely chaotic and loud and messy. So messy. I absolutely loved my coworkers and loved the company, but God, I'm so glad to be out of that situation. And I really, truly, deeply from the heart feel you if you're going through the same thing that I had to. Example number 3. Lastly, and arguably the most important, consider what the neighborhood's reputation is for safety and how this could affect you. And let's not kid ourselves, bad things can happen everywhere, but most cities do have their areas where drugs and crime and violence are a lot more apparent. A lot of the time, the issues that you're seeing outside are not reserved just for the streets, and the undesirable behaviors seep into the businesses in the vicinity, making you as an employee vulnerable to uncomfortable or downright dangerous situations. I have so many stories I could share about working in environments like this, but for sake of time, I'm just going to share my most memorable one. In my last video, I had shared that I had stupidly transferred to a different Winners location. And the reason I say stupidly is because that sector of the city is lousy with drugs, crime, and violence, and more. And I knew this was going to mean dealing with less than reasonable people on a daily basis. Something that I had never experienced before or been trained for that matter. There was one day where a man came into the change rooms at our store and ended up staying in there for probably upwards of a half an hour. We did keep checking in on him, but honestly just could not get him to leave. And when he did eventually come out, it was very clear he was incredibly intoxicated. So much so that he could barely hold himself up. Upon his attempted exit, he started passing out while walking. So he wouldn't hit the deck, he was holding on to some cards, and I sat there supporting him, having no desire to touch him or even interact with him. And before you tell me I'm a terrible person for thinking this way, people in this neighborhood are often using weapons and drugs, etc. on a daily basis in stores too, not just against each other, like against retail workers. And they're very unpredictable. So of course I was a little bit nervous around this guy because I didn't know what to expect if he had any kind of weapon on him. Like, people get knives pulled on them all the time. This experience was one of many, but I swore up and down that I'm never gonna work in an area that made me feel so unsafe and vulnerable. Number 6, hours and shifts. Next to mull over how working hours and shift lengths are gonna affect your life. Will they align with your needs, or are they going to put more pressure on your personal life? A lot of time in retail, us as managers, we do need to schedule for the needs of the business. That's our number one priority, of course. Albeit we do try to make it fair for everybody. But sometimes with it being more directed to the needs of the business, that means you may or may not get some shifts that are maybe less than ideal. For example, when I worked at TJX, almost once a week they had me doing clopening shifts. And if you're not someone who is familiar with this term, clopening means you close and then you're opening the next morning. How that looked in this situation was closing, staying very late, upwards of 10 p.m., and being back in the store in the morning for 6:30 to receive the truck. This type of shift switch is so taxing and it feels almost impossible to handle, especially if you have dependents. It makes you feel like you have very little home life because the second you get home, you're getting your family ready for bed, or in my case, 3 German Shepherds, and then jumping into bed yourself, getting too little sleep, and then having to get up early to set up your family to have a good day, and rushing out of the house to get to work exhausted. Hi ho, it's off to work we go. Be sure to ask during the interview what you can expect for shifts, how long they are, and how much they vary in terms of opening, mid-shift, and closing. Number 7, will you fit in? As much as we want everyone to feel welcome and comfortable in a workplace, the ugly truth is that it's just not always a reality. There are a great number of factors that can truly just set you too far apart from others in an environment. And where it's possible, I believe it's super important to identify this before getting into a job so you can avoid being hurt or outcast. I feel like I should premise this part by saying, no, I'm not saying we can't have diverse personalities in a workspace, but there are definitely some clashes that can be exceedingly problematic, like outspoken political values or a conflict with personality characteristics versus what a company is looking for to represent their brand. Politically speaking, I do not believe that politics belong in the workplace, as it can cause a lot of tension between teammates if there are any disagreements. If you're somebody who just can't hold in your opinions at work, then in my opinion, maybe it's best that you try to aim for a company that shares the same political values that you do, just so you don't offend anyone or become offended and end up resenting the people that you work with. Personality-wise, I almost always fit in with my environment and my peers, but that is because I've already made the mistakes of working for places that I truly just do not belong. And now I see that I just don't belong in certain settings, and that's totally fine, because I will fit in so many other places. For example, I worked at SCOA in Vancouver, which is a very spa-like skincare and facial business. Now, naturally, when you visualize a place like this, you imagine peace and calm, quiet, serenity. I'm like a teenager who's been given sugar right before nap time. Loud, anxious, cannot sit still. Not a good fit for a spa-like environment. They definitely made me feel like the outcast, and I got fired. I've definitely had some other similar experiences, albeit not that extreme, but enough for me to realize that I need to know my audience and choose something where my boisterous energy is going to be cherished rather than outcast. Just a side note, a personality trait that is going to make sure you don't fit in anywhere is a poor work ethic. If you lack the desire to do your part in a job, have fun being nobody's favorite. Nobody wants to do their job and yours too. Thanks, bye. Number 8, self-expression. Fitting in is great and all, but have you ever worked for a company that didn't allow you to stand out at all? I'm talking about self-expression in the workplace. Again, if this is something important to you, consider whether or not you'll be able to adorn yourself in a way that feels authentic to who you want to present as. And if you're not allowed, then ask yourself if this is something that you're willing to sacrifice for a part in this company. I mean, if someone wants to pay me 6 figures, you best believe I'll be coming to work looking like a thumb if they ask. For more on self-expression in the workplace, click the link in my description below to see my previous video. Number 9, weighing the pros and cons and what do you stand to lose or gain. Now that you've asked yourself and the company a plethora of questions, it's time to make the decision and answer whether or not this prospective employer is going to be right for you and your lifestyle. I would suggest making a good old-fashioned pros and cons list and see which side weighs heavier. Consider what you're willing to sacrifice, if it means stability or growth, better pay, etc. For example, when I decided to join NAP Canada, I had so much to consider. First of all, the pay was going to kind of suck within the first 2 years of training. Secondly, I absolutely was not going to fit in with my crazy bubbly personality. So that was something I was going to have to reserve for my own personal time, which was definitely going to be really, really difficult, and it was. And thirdly, I was gonna have to uproot my whole family and move the 3 hours from Calgary to Edmonton. But the trade-off was a 6-figure income, outstanding benefits, and an incredible career that I could be immensely proud of, and that would allow me to retire one day. Knowing the pros and cons, I opted to accept the position because the potential for a vastly better life was definitely worth the risks for me. Risks that honestly I would take again and again if I could. Now that I am back in retail after succumbing to the risks of NAV Canada, I got fired. I decided to reflect on and share what I've gained in this style of work, whether good or bad. So what have I gotten out of retail? Definitely big confidence in myself as a leader and just as a person in general. Definitely gained too much comfortability in the retail setting, something that I do wish to leave one day. But it's just so easy that I keep falling back into it. A social life. And with that being said, I've also made some long-lasting friendships. Transferable skills, yeah. So I believe a huge factor that helped me get into NAV Canada to begin with was my transferable skills as a manager. I'll get into that more in a future video, I think. A healthy respect for everyone else in retail, but also higher expectation for retail workers. No, I'm not expanding. A fit body, because I literally never sit still. References that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have forever. Confidence to aim very high for opportunities even though I may get shot down. A serious aversion to malls or just shopping in general on my days off. This one's kind of depressing, but a feeling of hopelessness of being stuck in retail, never being able to retire. A lot of free stuff. Love that for me. Good networks of people across a few different provinces. Everywhere I go, I've made connections and I feel like that's definitely a benefit. Major distrust of sales and marketing. Honestly, little desire to even leave my house on my days off. It's a lot. It's hard. Being people is hard. Very, very, very low tolerance to stupidity. Low tolerance to agitating noises. When you hear screaming children all day, yeah, you best believe I don't want to hear that on my days off. Shortened patience, but also I have more patience now. I don't really know how that works. If you get it, if you know, you know, you know? Weird meal times, like I have breakfast at noon, lunch at 3, and dinner at like 8. Constant munchies, but that's only at work. I don't get the munchies at home until like the evening, but while I'm at work, I just want to eat nonstop. Help me, help. I sincerely hope this video might be able to help somebody out who is having a hard time finding a job that suits them well. And I wish you nothing but good vibes and wealth in your new endeavors. Thank you again for stumbling across Retail Therapy Live. I hope you'll find me again next Friday or Saturday, depending on my work schedule, for another chat. In the meantime, you can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Retail Therapy Live, where I'll be posting a lot more frequent shenanigans. Also, feel free to leave me a comment, a like, whatever you want. Just say hi. Don't be mean. Or do, I don't care. I'll fight back. I'll fight you. Parking lot fight. Until next time, bye Felicia.